So, first off, thank you all for your interest in being an advocate in the way that you are. Um, there's some things that, even on the most minor of levels, have a huge impact. And as I was listening to Darnell speak, there were some things that I wrote down that I think, from my perspective, from my experience of coming from where I came from, I can add some context to it that maybe will help you understand how important some of these things are. So, for example, when he began, he said that guys were sending him money to help out. When I heard you say that, goosebumps instantly, right? Because to you, you couldn't figure out why they were doing it or why they were willing to sacrifice the pennies that they earned to send to you. But that's not what I heard when I heard you say it. I heard desperation. They were willing to sacrifice because they were desperate for information. The information that you were able to provide to them, as I spoke before, nobody's given that information. They were desperate and starved for information that they were willing to sacrifice what they had in order to continue to get up to the minute information that nobody else is providing. You've carved a lane that didn't exist on the MDOC freeway prior to your existence. Before you showed up, these guys weren't getting the information that you were providing to them. So that 50 or that 20 or that 10 or however much it was and however big the increment or small the increment was a sacrifice that those guys were willing to make in order to keep current information flowing to them. That's what I heard when I heard you say that. It didn't have anything to do with a part of stimulus checks. I mean, in all reality, in all honesty, right? The stimulus checks helped a lot of people incarcerated, tons of people, right? I've seen it up close. Some of those guys went years without anybody sending them anything. And when I say years, I mean not just a single year. Some of these guys, I've met guys in there that go 5, 10, 15 years without a penny other than what they earned on their state jobs, which sometimes could be as little as $7 a month, or it can be as large as $100 a month, depending on which job was available for them at the time. So for some of these guys, the stimulus check was an enormous help. All right. I was able to see guys that went years living off of the state be able to buy things that they needed. Basic stuff that when you go into the store, you don't even think twice about it. A razor, shavers. He was able to buy himself an actual haircut instead of the one the state provided, right? Socks, underwear, a hat to wear on his head when it's cold outside, toothpaste. I mean, everybody knows that free anything isn't the best of it. So, when the state's giving you toothpaste, it's basically the stuff they give you in a hotel room that they're throwing away most of the time. So when a guy actually gets a stimulus check and he's able to buy a $3 pack of Colgate, he's the happiest person in the world. Or, when I went into the system, we didn't have MP3 players at that time. That gradually came into effect. So you still got guys that are there that are listening to cassette players and tapes that you can't even buy no more, but they can't afford batteries to listen to the music. So stimulus helped out in ways that I don't think anybody could have foresaw coming. But to see it up close, to see the joy that was created in ways that were unimaginable, even I couldn't have seen coming. And I've lived it, 15 years of it. So to see a guy that 20 years and no money in his account, to be able to enjoy a brand new pair of socks or, a clean t-shirt that he didn't have to ask for. All of that stuff means a lot. So the information aspect of it, there's tons of guys that want to help themselves. However, the state and the MDOC don't allow them to. You're not allowed Google searches, which is why they're asking for this type of stuff. You're not allowed to call state representatives, which is why these guys are asking for that stuff. People tend to attach big labels to small things. For example, paralegal services, right? Paralegal seems like a big word, but what he's really asking you to do is call this private investigator and ask what happened to his request. It sounds like a gigantic word because they've attached this label to it. But in reality, he wants somebody to call his old attorney and ask what happened to the paperwork from trial. Why didn't you ever send me the paperwork from trial? Society doesn't realize that when you write a letter from prison, people ignore you. But let Kate call and say, hey, I'm calling for Kenneth Nixon. He wrote you a letter 2 weeks ago. Why didn't you respond to his letter? That lawyer is going to give you a totally different response than he gave Kenneth Nixon's letter. And I know this firsthand because I went through it. I was lucky enough to have family and support that would make that phone call for me. You know, when I wrote that letter, and honestly, that became part of my practice. I wrote the letter first, and if I didn't get a response within a reasonable amount of time, I would ask someone, hey, call and follow up on this letter. And you'd be surprised how many times it took for that phone call to come through before I actually got a response to the letter. These are the small things, right? That it takes 3 minutes to leave a voicemail or send an email or, you know, to whatever he's asking you to do. It may not seem big, or you may question, like, what the hell is he asking me to do this for? But in reality, it's huge. It's huge. One of the other things that I wrote down is when Audrey was speaking. When she started speaking, she was speaking about, you know, her involvement in the good time. For the people that don't know what good time means, it's you earn time off of your sentence. The federal system has it. Multiple states have it. It was abolished in Michigan, I think, like in 98 or something. But the point of it is there's no incentive to stay out of trouble in prison. None whatsoever. Not a single thing. There's no incentive, right? And in some facilities, you get treated better for being in trouble than you do for not being in trouble. Michigan Reformatory is a perfect example. They are one of the few facilities that have single-man cells. You have to get in trouble to get a single-man cell. Your punishment is being put in a room by yourself in a single-man cell. So if I stay out of trouble, I get locked in a room with another person that I know nothing about. That's your incentive, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but this is the way the facility is run. The more trouble you get into, the more benefits you get. But you're asking me to stay out of trouble. Why? What do I get for this? What is my incentive to not get in trouble? None. Absolutely none. People don't notice. This is the things that happen behind closed doors. Another example is, Darnell, when you were allowing guys to, when COVID was going on, call in, you would record and post on, I think it was YouTube, their version of what was happening behind the walls. In reality, if all of us think about it, right? When anything happens within the prison system, who do you hear from? You hear from the staff. You absolutely never hear from the inmates that it's happening to. And it's by design that it happens that way, because they control the narrative. They control what information gets out, and what they say goes, because nobody's available to question it. Who's the only people that can question it? The people that are being victimized by it. So if we cut off their microphone, nobody ever knows anything other than what we said happened. And 98% of the time, in my experience, it's the exaggerated truth. Chris Gautz is the spokesperson for MDOC, and he goes on TV every time something happens, and he gives this long spiel about how his officers didn't do this or didn't do that. The truth is, Chris Gautz has never worked in an MDOC facility. Chris Gautz was hired directly into Lansing. He's never stepped foot inside of an MDOC facility, but he speaks as if he did. He talks as if he did. His job is to protect the MDOC image, and he'll say anything to do that, even though he's never been in any of these facilities that he's defended. Allowing these guys to, now, don't get me wrong. Again, I've been on the inside, a decade and a half on the inside. Of course, you'll get some of these guys that exaggerate. Of course, you'll get some of these guys that you don't want to give a microphone to because they'll take it to the extreme. I can admit that firsthand. There's some guys that you don't want talking. However, When you're getting 2, 3, 5, 10 guys saying the same thing from multiple different places that have absolutely no connection to each other, there has to be some truth behind it. The motto for every journalist in the world is trust but verify. I can hear what you say, but if I can verify from multiple people in different places and we're all saying the same thing, we can't be making this up. The state does everything humanly possible to suppress the voice of people inside. And again, it's by design. That's why JPays are monitored. That's why phone calls are monitored. That's why the mail is monitored. They'll do anything to make themselves look good. And when I say anything, they'll lie, they'll fabricate, they'll make stuff up. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those law enforcement bashing type people. I understand that we need police. I understand that we need prisons. I understand that we need corrections officers. There are some good ones. They're far and few between, but there are some good ones. There's good administrative staff. However, you deal with these people on a personal level, and you realize that majority of the administrative staff speaks from the safety of their office 4 floors up. There's 16 locked doors in between them and what's happening on the ground level. There's 45 staff members that you have to get through before you can even talk to these people half the time. The reality is the people at the top, the people in Lansing, the administrative staff, they're so far removed from what's happening on the ground, they have no idea what's happening in their own facilities. None whatsoever. Us on this side give them a voice. We give them a voice that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I don't know if all of you realize this or not, but every person that works for the state has a state email. And that state email is public. Whether it's the warden, whether it's the officer, whether it's the inspector, every person that works for the state has a state email, and it's public information because taxpayers paid their salary. So there's nobody working inside of any correctional facility that you don't have access to at any time of the day or night. And in my experience, at the 5 facilities that I've been to, the higher up administration walk around with their cell phone on them. And that cell phone is attached to their state email because it has to be. So you have access to practically everybody in the facility at any given time, at any given moment, for whatever reason you need to. So if that means you have to irritate the hell out of the warden to get whatever this guy's problem is solved, so why not? If you work midnights and you thought about something that somebody asked you to do or some medical issue that some guy's having an issue with, why not email the warden at 3 o'clock in the morning? What's he going to say? No. You know, what's the worst can happen? They say no, or they don't respond. Okay. My wheel is bigger than yours. Now irritate the hell out of you before you get on my nerves. I mean, the service, and I call it a service because that's exactly what you guys are providing, me included. The service that is being provided from this small group of people is bigger than any one of you could even realize. Because a book may seem like a small thing, but to that guy that has been trying to get this book for the past 5 or 10 years, that book is everything. That's it. I'm not going to preach, but I just want you guys to realize that it's the small things have the biggest impact, especially in this situation and from where we sit.
It's okay to preach, Kenneth, because we need to hear it. And I liked that you spoke of a strategy that's often used to get to legislators, writing emails, doing phone calls. You get thousands and thousands of people to do that. But I must admit, hearing that in terms of the penal system and the legal system is something I haven't heard before. And I've been around organizations, Safe and Just Michigan, Nation Outside, Just Leadership US, but I've never heard anyone say, bug the hell out of those administrators in the prison. Actually, I like that. Keep preaching.
Yes. We have about 2 more minutes before our time. Omar, your hand. You want to say something?
Yeah, I appreciate you, Brother Kenneth. I didn't even know as much as much power that we had in our hands, and what really stuck with me is my brother. My older brother, which is the better man of me. I like to say sometimes I think he's the better version of me. He's mentally ill, and he gets treated the worst type of ways. And it hurts me sometimes because I don't understand the complexities of the things. But with your knowledge and what you just said, it helps me understand a lot better the power that I have to help him out. And I've been trying to help him out for years. And literally this conversation gave me so much clarification. I felt powerless in so many ways. And now I just I have no choice but to be better, man. So I appreciate you, man.
So just one quick thing before we go off, as far as the mental health thing, right? Prison became the answer to everything at some point during society's progression. Prison became the answer. If you didn't want to go to school, they sent you to prison. If you had a mental health issue, they sent you to prison. If you didn't want to do your homework, they sent you to prison. Like, prison literally became the answer for everything. And mental health in prison is one of the most understated things you'll ever hear about in society, because MDOC's answer to mental health is medicate. Medicate, medicate, medicate. They'll do anything they can, and they're not giving you the right medication. They're giving you the generic brand because the real stuff costs too much. So they're giving you the cheapest stuff that they can find to do whatever it is they need to do to keep you medicated, and they can control you. Their answer is cheap drugs. If you can't sleep, they're putting you on drugs. If you're sleeping too much, they're putting you on drugs. If you're violent, they're putting you on drugs. That's their answer for everything. So if you know he's suffering from some sort of mental health issue, you're not powerless, because you'd be surprised how far your one phone call will go. And you don't stop at the facility level, because there's people in Lansing that the people on the local level answer to, right? If the guy at the local facility isn't responding the way that you feel like he should be responding, he's got a boss. And that boss is a state employee too. And you've got access to him just as much as you do the other guy. So you're not powerless in that situation. It's just, you have to be creative in the way that you reach out to these people. And sometimes it takes some cussing out. Sometimes, you're not going to get the response, being polite, right? Because they feel like, what the hell are you going to do? Who are you going to call? So sometimes it takes for you to cuss somebody out. Sometimes it takes for you to spaz out on somebody and cuss them out, call them out their name. Sometimes it's necessary. It sounds funny, but you'd be surprised the response that you get. You can go 6 months calling, emailing, and not getting what you need done. And the moment you fly off the handle, they're like, oh shit, we probably need to take care of this ASAP. Like, that's just the reality of how people are. They feel like they're protected. They feel like there's nothing you can do, because it's not like you can go to the facility and beat them up. Like, it's asinine the way that this place operates, but it's such a bad thing because nobody ever does anything about it. There's few organizations that are doing this type of stuff. I think there's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, and they literally help as many people as they physically can on a regular basis. But there's a void there, right? If they're helping with medical issues, that means they can't send out, tax information, or they can't send out, Google information. It's just impossible for them to cover everything.
I am utterly speechless. I am very grateful for everyone in this room, on this call, for the insights and for as much of yourself as you have shared on today. Kenneth being in this room is a priceless gift. It galls me that this black brilliance was enchained for 15 years, unrighteously, unjustly so, and I know he is not without peer. And for him to be on this side and be so steeped in eloquence and exactitude, you're prepared for such a time as this, and we become as an instruments in the hands in a certain kind of a way. So I'm very grateful for what you've shared, sir. Audrey, I'm sorry, your hand, and then Audrey, you're going to have the last word for us.
Okay. Kenneth, welcome home. Welcome home.
Thank you.
What we have heard from Kenneth, and for me, that's amazing. But there are so many more. So many more. The brilliance, the talent, the gifts that are in a space so inhumane, even I can't even imagine it. And so whatever we do is real important. And I really do hope that we all can collectively build this base of power. Because when we collectively come together on one accord, I know that God will give us everything we need to set the captives free that should be free. And even though the group seems small now, that base will become larger and larger and larger if we keep our hands to the plow. You know, I like that song, Darnell. We keep our hands to the plow. We don't look back. We keep plowing on. And I'm looking at, I went to the survey and tried to do it, but I'm having problems on the Chromebook, and now that's why I went to computer, but it's not on the computer. So may I ask that you email the survey? Absolutely. And I certainly will complete the survey and do my part. I have a heart for reform of this criminal justice system. I really have a heart for it. And it's got to change. Every little bit is like someone with a chisel and a hammer, hammering away at it piece by piece by piece. There's a movement to change the criminal justice system. Again, welcome home, Kenneth. Welcome home.
Thank you all for joining this Zoom, and thank you all for joining the movement. I look forward to being in touch with all of us this week. We'll get that form sent out in the email within the next 15 minutes. All right? You all be well, and until the next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.